Hello friends, and welcome to Under the Banyan Tree and Tea with English Monk. I don't ordinarily drink whilst I'm talking, but Supanyo's just brought me a cup of tea, and as you see, the skies have turned grey, the wind has picked up. I'm hoping the wind is not attacking the microphone. I'm shielding it so that you can hear me okay. It's a beautiful place to sit here. Fortunately, this part of India isn't too affected by monsoon season. We do get some rain, usually in the evenings and night time. But similarly, like Tumkur last year, where I was staying not far from here, it was a very pleasant time of year, a good climate. Hence how it became a conurbation in the first place, established probably whilst the British were here, because they liked to have fairly steady weather. In the colonial times, they were moving for the hot season up north and for the cold season up there to the dry, cool season down here, and back and forth like this. That's some distance. That's, larger distance than the whole of Europe. It's a big country. But what I want to talk to you today about is patience. The Pali word for patience is Khanti. Khanti is often translated, though, as patient endurance. Now, that's not incorrect. There's no precise, accurate translation of the word Khanti, as there are for none of these Pali words. But I prefer to think of patience as something more positive. And when one applies the word endurance after the word patience, it adds some negativity to it. As in, you have to endure something, put up with it, suffer it and its consequences. And this is being patient. Well, I don't think anybody really aspires to that or wants to experience this, even when they feel they are having to endure something that they are not liking. It is better to establish and find, I think, a way of appreciating the positive nature of the experience we are having. After all, this entire practice, Buddhist practice, of sila, moral virtue, samadhi, meditation, and panya, the development of wisdom, following the Noble Eightfold Path, is not about hiding away, running away from our worldly experiences, our lives, but to face up to what is the truth and what is the reality. What is the nature, the characteristics of our existence, of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and things being out of our control. And very often situations will arise where this is so evident, things become difficult, awkward, annoying, irritating, all of these negative emotions that arise out of things not going in accordance with your expectations. So firstly, there's the problem there right at the beginning, and that is expectations. This is often where the root of impatience, the root of suffering through, let's say, a lack of patience, comes from expectations. Now, please excuse me, I'm going to have a sip of my tea before it is filled with bugs. It's very nice. This is just black tea with some sugar. I don't ordinarily have sugar, but I like to once in the afternoon at this time have some sugar for a bit of an energy boost. Supanyo, as well as the Kapia, they make a wonderful cup of tea. Charwallahs, as they call them here. A wallah is someone who does stuff. Char being chai wala, I mean, chai being tea. A panka wala, as I said before, is panka is a fan. And he's the guy who sits there pulling the fan like this. If you didn't have motors, we have motors now. Although this afternoon has been, as it seems, most afternoons here, no electricity. So once again, choosing to have my bathing time at this time of day, around 3 o'clock, is the wrong time because there's no way of getting water from the well to my bathroom. So I have to carry many buckets, and it's quite a distance, and they're very heavy, and I'm continually putting them down and practicing patience with the situation as it is. So let's learn how to make patient endurance into patient enjoyment, because that's what I do. This is how I treat patience. Rather than patient endurance, I call it patient enjoyment. Yes? Now that sounds a bit funny, doesn't it? A bit contradictory, a bit paradoxical. Patience, Khanti, is one of the 10 parami, the qualities that perfections or qualities or perfections we develop throughout our lives or this life. I can't remember all of the 10, but there's loving kindness, metta, Khanti, virya, energy, samadhi, the ability to keep single-pointed awareness, focus in meditation, and so on. There are 10 of them. But one very important one is Khanti, and it is very important because without patience, we cannot be expected to develop what is another one of the 10 parami, and also one of the 7 factors of enlightenment, and that is equanimity, or upekkha, the Pali word. Equanimity, upekkha, is, as I said, here's Supanyo now. Hello, Supanyo. How can I help you? You're just watching. Okay, you come and sit down if you like. Come and join me. But I'll just carry on. So patience, one is developing in order to be able to establish and develop equanimity, which is one of the 7 factors of enlightenment. So this is how important it is. As you're there, is it working? Ah, good. We're all good. We have a cameraman today. How exciting. When you're traveling, when you're in different countries with different cultures, experiencing different living conditions, different ways of practicing this very practice. Even Buddhism is different when you go into different cultures. The chanting is different. Even the way they wear their robes is different, as some of the things I've demonstrated and shown you in recent videos. You have to some degree, learn to fit in and to not be disturbed by the unpredictability and the expected uncertainty, which is another translation of anicca, the Pali word we use for uncertainty or impermanence, that is inevitably going to come along all of the time. Now, apart from in monastic life, living as a monk, when you are traveling from A to B, as you go through different countries, there are different circumstances that one faces, and they can be extremely different. Going from India into Thailand as a Buddhist monk through immigration is one of the most pleasurable and pleasant experiences one can ever have, because you're welcomed into Thailand. You rarely have to do much more than wave your passport, and you're taken through, given all of the help you need, put on a bus, a ticket bought for you with a special seat on the bus. Arrangements are made to give you water, anything you need if it's the appropriate time food-wise on the journey, and you are looked after 100% with the utmost respect at immigration and welcomed into the country. In complete reverse of that, when you're coming back into India, you are treated basically as a terrorist, as a criminal, as an unwanted person arriving in the country. I was put in an office for over an hour, interviewed, cross-examined as to my exact agenda, purpose, role, and what on earth I was doing here in India. Now, this is to be expected. I don't complain about this, and I'm not complaining about this. But when you've had a long journey, you've been perhaps traveling for nearly 24 hours, you're tired, you're worn out, you've perhaps missed your opportunity to eat at the correct time, or even if you ate at the correct time, you wouldn't have had perhaps the best of or appropriate nourishing foods. It can be a little bit trying, a little bit taxing, a little bit difficult. And these are the circumstances where one has to exercise the utmost in patient endurance, if you want to call it that, developing equanimity. But more importantly, as I have experienced from many such occasions, if you can develop patient enjoyment, the whole experience is so much less painful. So how do we do that? Well, we take this opportunity, like all of the opportunities we have in our lives where there is any element of suffering, as a lesson, as a teacher, a teaching or an exposition, an expansion, an example of the Buddha's teachings on the Four Noble Truths, the suffering and the end of suffering. So we have the Four Noble Truths: suffering, cause of suffering, end of suffering, and the path leading to the end of suffering. Now, the minute you experience some suffering, if you're a practiced Buddhist, you can... Sorry, Supanyo. You okay? Can you just go? That's kind of putting me off a little bit. You're staring. Just there. No. That's cool. You stand there. That's right. So Supanyo is like staring right in front of me like this, and it's confusing me a little bit because I'm trying to make eye contact, but not make eye contact. So one takes this point where you experience some suffering, and you examine it, and you see, what is it arising from? Why are you suffering? Well, of course, it's because of expectations. You were expecting, take the example of immigration, you were expecting to just fly through as a tourist with your visa, everything properly arranged, and be able to just carry on. When you are stopped and asked why, it was not what you were expecting. Now, actually, I've done this many times, so it kind of was what I was expecting, but even so, it can be difficult to deal with if you don't practice some patience. Now, how do you turn patient endurance into patient enjoyment? You treat patience the same way as you treat one of the four Brahma Viharas, karuna, compassion. If you think of patience like we think of compassion, karuna, it can become enjoyable. So, if we have compassion for others, and even compassion for ourselves in certain circumstances, it is a positive and a pleasant experience as long as it's handled correctly, held gently, not gripped onto. You see, compassion also can create more suffering if you take it on as a cause and you go marching with your banners, stamping and protesting. Whereas if you simply exercise compassion in a soft approach, empathetically feeling the other people's pain or suffering, without taking it on board yourself, but offering the help you can and feeling for them positively, you can offer so much more help than trying to fight against their pain or suffering, which is probably something that is there and inevitable, as is our own in any times when this occurs. If we try and ever fight against things, if we try and resist, it just creates more friction, more heat. It's not accepting things as they are. It's fighting against them. Now, the Buddha didn't teach this. The Buddha taught there is suffering, and there is a cause of suffering, end of suffering, and the path leading to the end of suffering. So we find the cause. So when you're locked in an office in a not very nice part of the airport where otherwise just criminals or terrorists would be locked up and expected to sit there for quite some time, you could protest, you could shout, you could argue, but I shouldn't be treated like this, I shouldn't be this, I shouldn't be that. This is just going to cause friction and more difficulty for yourself, but more so, you're going to cause difficulty for the people whom are doing this to you. It is not their fault. They're doing their job. Even the people whom above them give them the job to do, there's always someone above them. These are just people in different chains of command doing how they've been shown what they have to do and for whatever reasons why they're doing it. This is where we should exercise compassion and think, well, if I sit here and just relax, watch the breath and smile. It really helps if you smile, as long as you don't smile too much so as you know what I mean, winding them up in that situation. But if you're in the queue at the railway station or the queue in a shop, some shops you see, you can come to some countries and just simply going to a shop to buy something simple, a packet of coffee, or I don't often have to do this, but if I'm going with someone, I can think, why does it have to take so long just to a simple transaction in a shop? Because one gets used to this being quite a simple thing in some places, and in other places it's really can take a long time and be quite a difficult thing. These are all situations whereby we have to exercise this Khanti, this patient endurance, if we look at it that way. But if we simply breathe and smile, and then, I don't like to say feel sorry for, but feel compassionate towards the people whom are also suffering because of these circumstances that you're in. These are all circumstances that result from causes and conditions. The direct result, immediate result of karma, actions. Actions we've all done, and we'll all experience to some extent the karmic results, the vipaka, of people surrounding us, these actions, at least in terms of witnessing them and viewing them. And if someone is suffering as a result of their circumstances, their causes and conditions, and their suffering is inflicted upon you in either their impatience or their lack of empathy, their lack of compassion, they could be quite angry towards you. They could be quite suspicious or critical of you. You could go on the defensive and say, well, I don't deserve this. Oh, why am I like this? But if you turn it around and see it as more their problem rather than your problem, because you're going to be leaving here soon, you're going to be doing something else soon, and as long as you've been putting the right causes and conditions in place, because you've been keeping sila, practicing samadhi, and developing wholesome mind states, reducing unwholesome mind states, then you will not be experiencing long-term suffering. You're just experiencing some momentary suffering, which is not even your suffering. You're sharing compassionately this other person's suffering. Now, I must say, patience, generally speaking, where it becomes something that's a problem, is when we're talking about patience in respect to other people. When it comes to, say, the hot water not working, or the cold, in here we don't have hot water, the water full stop not working, or your oven we don't have ovens either. Some things, your TV or your phone or something like this not working properly, an inanimate object, one can become impatient towards that. That's a little bit more difficult. But this is a circumstance where you have to be compassionate towards yourself, because you cannot be compassionate towards an inanimate object, but you can develop patience and patient enjoyment with an inanimate object if you see the funny side of it, if you see that it is just expectation. So for instance, I've often now made videos like this, and especially making those live videos that I'm experimenting with just at the moment, and they haven't worked at all. I've done everything that I thought was correct, but because the internet decides to, I don't know, some message comes from the internet provider and that just turns it off, and then it makes it all stop, I could get all upset. But there's no point, because it's not going to help. And that's not just passing it off and ignoring the situation. One looks at the experience, learns from it, not necessarily how to resolve it, but certainly how not to react negatively towards it. And the way you do that, in terms of when you're just dealing with yourself, is having compassion for yourself. Pat yourself on the back. We'll say, never mind, monk, just relax. You've got plenty of time, the opportunity. Be thankful for that. You can do it all over again. You don't. It's not like you had a deadline and you've missed the opportunity. You can try again tomorrow. Count your blessings. And this, in turn, is training, practicing, teaching you this virtue, this quality of Khanti, patience. Now they say it's an expression in the West, that patience is a virtue. I hope I wasn't rude to Supanya, but he was just being like a cameraman on the other side of the camera there, but he's standing there with his eyes staring at me. He's very dark. He's got his big bright eyes, and he's a lovely chap. But where he's standing now, I'm not used to having someone. I've had lots of people to talk to, but just one person just staring like this was a little difficult for me to concentrate for a moment. In fact, I still haven't got it quite together since. But he's wandering around now. He's very happy. I hope he didn't take offence. It's useful actually, because at least I know he's coming back. At least I know the camera is working. This is very great. A very useful situation that I should now turn around and see what was causing me a little, not suffering, discomfort. You see, annoyance is a word, isn't it? It comes from a lack of patience. But when you turn this patience into patient enjoyment rather than patient endurance, there is no annoyance, irritants, irritating. When we are irritated, when we are annoyed, again, it's more of a problem rather than with an inanimate object, like a piece of equipment, a device not working correctly. When it's a person not behaving how you were expecting them to, it's always about expectation. I don't know if you can hear that. This is kind of jolly Indian, Hindu festival music and things that you often hear at festival times and weekends here. Such a very culturally different place, India, to many other parts of the world. And things that are important to people in different cultures may not be so important to you, and vice versa. Things that are important to you may be very unimportant to them. So you might think it's extremely important that you get a train ticket on a particular day, in a particular type of, they have different classes, about 9 or so classes of seat in a train in India. I've from my first trip to India, I've not really bothered with the train since. I try to get buses. I find they're very difficult also, but the trains, unless you're going long distances, and then really actually I've been very fortunate in that those long distances, there've not been many occasions, there's been a few. I've been fortunate enough to fly, which is so much easier. It's a big country. But say you're expecting to get a train ticket and you want a certain type of train ticket and this, that and the other. Well, to us maybe that's important, but to the person who is giving you the ticket, selling you the ticket, it's just important you get on the train and you get to where you're going, not how so much, maybe. So there's a different emphasis on importance. So therefore a different expectation. So if you don't recognize that difference in your expectations, you're not exercising karuna, compassion. And therefore you cannot be expected to have patience. You'll be thinking or saying even, well, what is it they don't understand? How simple is this? These are all things I found myself thinking or even saying. What is their problem? When you hear yourself, when you look at yourself and think, come on, they're just looking at this from a very different point of view. What you hold, what you're attached to as being important is probably not that important to them. Food, very important to people that you have eaten, and you will never go hungry, not here in India, because this is a way people greet you like this. It's a question: have you eaten? Not is your air conditioning working? Are your shoes comfortable? Or these kinds of what is trivial, unimportant to them, that in the West might be important to us. We would rather assume most people we come across in the day have eaten and probably had more than one meal. That is an assumption made here. So this is an understanding we develop. And this applies to any circumstances in life where you feel you're having to exercise patience. Turn it around, think of it positively. Think of patience as the opportunity to watch how your mind is reacting, or when you are practiced at this, actually not reacting. When you can perfect patient enjoyment rather than patient endurance, it does become that. It becomes enjoyable. Now, so often I will stand in a queue or or be there waiting for something, trying to explain to a man in a little shack of a shop that I already have, say, a SIM card in this phone. I just want to put some data on the phone, on the SIM card. You would think that's quite simple. Not at all. It's a very complicated and difficult thing to get across, even with someone speaking the language fluently. Now, one can become impatient, and it will not happen. It won't work. It's not. You're going to get nowhere without patience in this situation. I'm just using this as an example. I'm not picking on this situation. It's just a good example from my point of view, and only really one where I've had to really see patience or lack of it. But fortunately, being able to realize that this is just the difference of point of view and expectations that is causing me, or would potentially cause me, extra suffering, is where you can really see and recognize that suffering arising and the cause of it. And what is that cause? It's just expectation. So when you get rid of the expectation, you can minimize, you can get rid of the suffering, and you can turn endurance into enjoyment. So you can smile, you can laugh, you can say to yourself, actually, it is not that important. You may be getting a train from this city to another city. If I don't get there today, well, I'll get there tomorrow. But I'll get there eventually. Or you could stamp your feet, scream and shout and argue. You're still not going to get there today. You're only going to get there tomorrow. If you just wait patiently and enjoy the extra time you have to practice some watching the mind, practice some meditation, then you're seizing a wonderful opportunity, not only to develop patience, but enjoy being patient, turn patience into compassion, develop that extra Brahma Vihara of compassion, also within the 4 Brahma Viharas, as well as metta, compassion, and mudita, is upekkha, equanimity. So equanimity, along with patience, comes up in the 7 factors of enlightenment, it comes up in the 10 parami, it comes up in the 4 Brahma Viharas, in all of these wonderful lists. And it shows you how important a virtue it is. So patience truly is a virtue. But don't let it be patient endurance. Don't let it be more suffering. Let it be patient enjoyment. Now Supanyo is standing there. He's been very patient. He's not interrupting me, so maybe he's about to tell me that my house is burning down. No, I can see it. It's just there and it's okay. But I'm sure that the time is getting on. So I have a few more questions have come along, which I will deal with, perhaps talk about in the next video. I have worked out that the anniversary of this channel is the 20th of August, which, if I'm right, I think is a Sunday. So it's nothing particularly special. It's just interesting that it'll be 365 days of making these, putting these videos of some sort or other anyway on here. And it's interesting to see how the you as subscribers, how people have subscribed and are continuing to watch, and getting your feedback, and really seeing how slowly but surely this has grown and become something perhaps worthwhile. But that has grown and become worthwhile with patience. It's not been something I've had to endure, it's something I've enjoyed, patient enjoyment. But sometimes I've had to have patience. When I was first making these videos here in India, it was very difficult to find somewhere ever that wasn't extremely noisy, because I didn't have a microphone like this that someone sent me kindly, one of you subscribers. He's also sent me they've sent me different microphones which cut out the background noise. But where I was previously, sometimes you would not hear me over the noise. And if you go back to the old videos, you see that. And I got very impatient at times, thinking, well, I was just trying to make a short video talking about something and I can't even hear myself think. This is the nature of the circumstances I was in. But it's helped me in terms of developing patience in that respect to continue with the effort, because people were watching and enjoying the videos. So I thought, well, it's worth putting in that little bit of effort and finding patience to do it. And then it becomes enjoyable. So it certainly hasn't ever been an endurance, although there has been a certain amount of patience that's needed to be exercised. So maybe on the 20th, what I'd like to do is a live. It's very difficult to find the right time. Most people are viewing in India. The next highest percentage of people are in, it says the USA, but that can be various different time zones. India is only one time zone, even though it's a big country. That's why it's half an hour out. It's not an hour. They split the difference. Rather than having 2 time zones, they made it half an hour. So it's always 5.5 hours ahead, or 3.5 hours behind, or 12.5 hours. So it's one time zone. But Australia and America have various 2 or 3 time zones. I think America's 2, is it, or 3? I'm not sure. But if there's a time when I could do a live questions and answers, you could just type them in the comments. I'm not going to attempt to do a Zoom thing yet. I'm not sure that I've got the necessary knowledge how to do that. Well, it might be a case of internet as well being a problem. And but you know, if a lot of people could come and make comments, even to just say hello and ask a question, or just say hello, and see if I could get 100 people all live to say namaste, hello at the same time on the first anniversary of this channel. I think 108 is an auspicious number in Buddhism. We'll never get precise 108 people, but if we get more than 108 people to be all online at the same time on the 20th of August, even if it's just for 5 minutes, we'll find, with your suggestions, the best time to do that. The time of day or night, it doesn't matter for me whatsoever. But of course, a lot of the people that do watch these videos are in India. So it's going to be usually in the evening here. No, it doesn't matter, I don't think. But we'll see. Live, I'm not sure. Live is a new thing to me. We'll see. I don't think there's ever very many numbers watching. But it would be interesting to see if it's possible to get over 100, well, over 108 people watching one live broadcast, if you can call it that. And then I could give you some blessings and just say anumodana, thank you, really, for subscribing, for viewing and watching, all at the same time, live. And it would, I think, be a nice thing to do on Sunday, the 20th of August. So any suggestions as to how that could be done, I would welcome them. Otherwise, I'll just carry on as normal. So, patience, patient enjoyment, not patient endurance. And patient enjoyment is a wonderful thing. It's just like compassion. You have compassion for the person who isn't meeting your expectations, and rather than being irritated, then you are understanding. And when you are understanding, you're not irritated. And never to be irritated, never to be annoyed, is a wonderful thing. Because these are such a waste of time, these emotions. Irritation, annoyance, there is nothing positive about those emotions. They are pointless. They're just taking your suffering and multiplying it and rubbing it in. It's like rubbing salt in the wound. It's like picking a scab. It's like a splinter, pushing it in further. It's just adding to your suffering. It serves no useful purpose whatsoever. And the way we can avoid it is just to understand. So without expectation, take our expectations and realize they're just our own delusion, our own confusion, and put yourself in the position of the person you are talking to, remembering always the person in front of you is the most important person there is, always, at that moment. Then you are having true compassion, and then that results in patience, and most importantly, patient enjoyment. So I should leave it there, because although we have some better equipment now, and hopefully better internet, I still don't want to push it too much and overheat things. So until next time, yes, I think that's enough for today. Is there something else I had to say? That's it. Thank you. Thank you for watching.